Tim. I want to do a slight correction. I kept calling Akim Williams. It's Akeem.
It's Akeem.
The Prince of Zamunda. Akeem Williams.
Royalty in Zamunda.
And I got to thank my man, Dave Palumbo. Just had a baby from RX Muscle.
Congratulations,
His
Dave.
third kid. Who knew, right?
He's our age, isn't he?
Dave Palumbo is the training guru, RX Muscle Media guy, based out of New York. He's not here with us, playing daddy back home, but we respect what he brings to the sport.
Absolutely.
Let's send it down to the judges. Big Steve.
Thank you, Bob. Max 1.
And see, back in the day, we were talking about Lee Labrada earlier. By the time I got to the Olympia, Lee Labrada had done several shows. I mimicked him because in between, like, the guys are standing with their hands on their waists. Go back to YouTube and find Labrada. He's standing like a statue. I mean, even though he's not being called out, he's waiting to be called out. And these guys kind of relax, take it easy, laid back, but they are mimicking each other, right? I think they should take a page out of history and go back and see what the guys were doing that laid the foundation, and the composure will look significantly different.
This is an interesting call out right here. There's a lot of mass right here, a lot of shape, and a lot of varied sizes.
You spoke earlier on about Luke's unique look, different look, yes? But I think that's great for the sport because when we step on stage, we want to be different. We don't want to be the same as everybody else.
Yeah, a little gamesmanship going on there.
You know, he wants to make sure that he belongs there. So he knows that Cedric is like the comedian, Tim. He likes to have fun up there, but he's a serious guy.
Well, he gave Luke a couple of quick pats, and Luke was about to give him quite the goose that would have made the audience laugh.
Quarter turn to the right.
There's a lot of muscle on there, this call out, guys.
We were talking about our man right here
Quarter turn.
earlier, who's got all the potential in the world. Big Patrick, I'd love to see him stand in the middle next to Cedric just so we can see what the future is going to look like. He's slight. See, he's almost as tall as Cedric. And he's got to do the Ronnie Coleman thing. He's got to get bigger hamstrings. He's going to have to continue working on bringing up his calves and fill out his pecs like Ronnie Coleman. And that's not an easy thing to do. When we talk about filling out, that means you got to be like Lucas and throw some weight on the bar and get serious about how strong you are.
Lucas and Luke switch.
Oh, this is going to be interesting.
And I meant Luke, not Lucas. Luke is a strong bodybuilder.
Akeem and Patrick switch.
All right, bring Patrick over here next to Cedric. There we go. I think he is. You hear the crowd responding to him? He's welcoming him to the stage. Cedric knows talent when he sees it, too.
Front double bicep.
This is going to be a good comparison.
I think Cedric's dialing in as we speak.
Well, that's what happens. The more you pose, the better you get. And some guys can separate themselves from the others. He's a veteran on the stage. Starts slow out of the box, a little bit soft, but as he poses, he gets harder. And you can see the difference in the maturity here. Patrick needs to just put some more meat on that frame, and he'll be right there with Cedric. But if you're looking for aesthetics, Patrick's got everything. He looks like an athlete.
He's got the real foundations to make those changes to be a real force within a couple of years' time. How old is Patrick?
I don't have his age.
Let's look in the notes.
Luke is a very young bodybuilder. He's in his
In his 20s.
Yeah, in his 20s, probably 25, 27, I believe.
Spread out a little bit, hit a back lat
But
spread.
the thing about it is, Neil, when I was coming up, I hit the stage at like 22 years old at the Olympia, right behind Gaspari, who was like 21 years old. And throughout my 20s, there was the introduction of Flex and Kevin and all these young bodybuilders that made up the Olympia lineup in early 30s. Now these guys are much older. I mean, 30 is probably the average age, maybe 35 for these guys. Can you believe that Lee Haney retired at 31 with 8 Olympia trophies? It is
So hard to believe.
I mean, the things that Arnold Schwarzenegger was doing at the age of 28, and we're talking about Dexter at 49.
And also, when he stepped away from the industry, he was in his lifetime best condition. And there's been very few Mr. Olympias which have actually ever done that. Most Mr. Olympias have actually stepped away from the stage, not representing their best all-time best.
On the decline. We know that Dorian Yates went out at his absolute worst, and Ronnie Coleman at his worst. Lee Haney went out looking almost his absolute best at 31 years old, and he still had gas in the tank. If he put another 5 years in there, he still had gas in the tank. I mean, Dorian might want to have something to say about that, because Dorian changed. From 92 to 93, he was like night and day. But I would have loved to see that competition with Lee Haney in 92, along with Dorian Yates in 92, and Kevin Levrone and myself. That would have been a one for the ages. That Lee would have probably been winning his 9th Olympia.
Well, I mean, that's a great question for you. So you get a guy like Patrick that comes out here, and he's up against some of these mass monsters, and maybe a little shorter. What was it like being up against those beasts back in the day?
Yeah. Lee Labrada was showing me it was possible. Muhammad Makaway showed me it didn't matter how tall you were or how big you were. Chris Dickerson at 5'6" and Samir Banu at 5'6". I took on giants that were invisible to me because I was trying to be Lee Labrada. I was trying to be Muhammad Makaway. They showed me it was possible.
William and Brandon.
And now we get to the payoff. This is what you pay the big bucks to see. We are probably potentially looking at the next Mr. Olympia in this call out right here.
And I don't know if you guys saw that as we were talking. Cedric and Patrick were having quite a moment of some great camaraderie and some great encouragement.
It's going to be interesting where they start placing these, where they're going to start moving these athletes around. They're starting to do it now.
Hottie and Dexter switch.
Well, I got to tell you,
William and Steve switch.
Hottie, I believe, is in the conversation. These judges are going to play with us right now. They're not going to give away this show by going 1, 2, 3. Like, you know what I mean? We're not going to figure it out right away. But I mean, I keep coming back to what Brandon is bringing. He's probably one of the more improved bodybuilders over the past 5 years.
This is a pose which really Brandon dominates tonight in his quarter turns. He's got so much depth through his hamstring and his thigh. He's got that upper body. He's got that mass, that shoulder. He's got that.
And to see the width difference between William and Hottie, we were talking earlier, this is where Hottie really is bringing it to William Bonac. So now we got to look next to Hottie over at Brandon, who Hottie is right there.
Hardy's lived up to my expectations, seeing him in the flesh, as well as, you know, pictures and videos, etc. And let's go back. He was a 212 athlete. Progressed, moved up, came into the open class, made a massive impression.
You want to hear something crazy? Dexter Jackson started out his career as a bantamweight.
Wow.
He's a full-fledged 230-pound bodybuilder now and has an Olympia trophy, 9 Arnold Classic championships, 29 victories coming from the bantamweight division.
Front lat spread.
And it looks like the veteran Dexter Jackson has actually improved in the last 20 minutes between the first round opposing.
Yeah, I actually believe that Dexter is battling it out with Rolly Winkler for 4th place.
But at the moment, guys, it looks like first and second look like it's between potentially Hardy and Brandon.
That's where I'm at. I was going to say that just before you said it, which would then leave William as the odd man out fighting for that 3rd place spot. Who would have thought, Neil, about 3 years ago that we'd be talking about Hadi and Brandon Curry potentially posing down for the Olympia title?
But this is what it's about. So this is supposed to be an international sport for everybody. And unfortunately, obviously, with issues between countries, it's forced the gentleman away from having the chance to prove himself as a true Olympian competitor. And he's really made a great impression here. Him and his coach, Harry Rambod, they've done a great job.
Guys, I got to say, I love the open title this year. And I love the fact that it is just wide open to who brings their best.
Well, let me tell you, the whole weekend's been great, Tim. I mean, what Dan Solomon has done with Tamer El Gundy producing the show and Dan Solomon presenting this competition and bringing his entire crew and staff here together. This is probably one of the most memorable Olympias that we've had in a long time. Not to mention, it's historical in nature. Crowning of a new Mr. Olympia, which we witnessed a year ago with Sean Roden defeating Phil Heath. This one has a little bit more suspense and hype to it because these are guys that were never supposed to win the Olympia. These are guys we weren't going to be talking about as a Mr. Olympia winner, and now they're in the conversation.
In addition to what Dan Solomon and his team and Tamer have done, 650 plus competitors for the amateur Olympia this weekend.
Massive shot. I think that's the biggest one that they've had. And again, what I was saying earlier is like 6 months ago, Hadi didn't even know if he can get a visa to come into the country. And you got to train through that, hoping that you get it. Can you imagine he looked like this and a week ago they tell him no visa? We would have one of the best bodybuilders in the world sitting back home. And it would be a whole different dynamic we're talking about tonight.
Now, Neil, what was that switch we just saw with Dexter and
William? Yeah, to me that tells me that the number 1 and 2 is definitely the battle between Hadi and Brandon, just because of the situation. Otherwise, you would put William potentially in the middle of those two and put him in the center and compare him between those two athletes. And if first, second, and third in no order is those 3 athletes, then they're totally different shapes and structures. Look at them.
Well, don't be surprised if Dexter Jackson pulls up into 4th place.
Yeah.
Because he's made better improvements than Rolly did overnight. I believe I firmly got Steve Kuklo in 6th.
Hadi's shoulders and arms were just bursting off of each part they're supposed to be.
Well, you know what? If he doesn't win the contest, he's already won the country. What he's done in his first Olympia right now is significant and will be talked about for years to come.
Brandon and Hadi.
There it is.
And let me tell you something. They're not giving them a chance to rest. You know why? Right now, this is where you earn your money. They're giving $400,000 away. You better get back out there, and they've got to fight for it. If you come out there thinking this is going to be a walk in the park, somebody, look at the look on Brandon's face. He's like, I'm ready for this. You got to fight for every inch of space on this stage.
So this is your top 3.
And guess what? None of them are over 5'7". The last guy to win that tall was Dexter Jackson in 2008. It's been 11 years.
Brandon switch. Well, we know that top prize is $400,000, but second and third, $150,000 and $100,000 respectively.
Steve Weinberger's playing with us. He's got them all moving around like a magic act, not letting anybody get comfortable in their positioning.
I definitely feel that Williams had an injury on his right quad.
Well, I could tell you, that didn't slow him down because a year ago he was a little bit watery, and he wouldn't have been in this lineup. I believe he was 4th last year, yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
And he is the benefactor of not having a Sean Roden and a Phil Heath and a Big Ramy in this competition, because the injury, however slight or even noticeable, he's still going up against a 49-year-old in Dexter Jackson that didn't bring his A game, and a potentially injured Rolly Winkler, who's slightly off too.
William was actually 5th last year. Brandon was 4th.
Okay.
With Rolly in 3rd.
Either way, he's the benefactor. William is the benefactor of certain circumstances involving the other athletes right now. And it just goes to show you, you can't put on a show unless you actually show up. And it's a hard road to get to Mr. Olympia.
William was 4th last year. Roden, Heath, Roddy Winkler, William Bonner.
Correct. Thank you for correcting that. William is making note of how big his arms are. They are big, but the judges can see that. Calm down, William.
On the line.
One of William's best body parts is his arms, and he was definitely making sure the judges were noticing. You see they keep inching closer, Tim. There's a reason for that. The closer you are to the judges, the more three-dimensional you look. But they are smart enough to keep them in the best lighting, to have them on the line so that no one has an advantage.
Okay. Now, I just saw an earpiece on Hadi Chupan.
Yes, he's had difficulty hearing for quite some time. A lot of people are trying to he looks like he's trying to read your lips. He doesn't speak English. And so what do? We talk louder, thinking he will understand, but he's got a hearing impairment.
That's a phenomenal pose for William. Any rear pose, he is unbelievable. And personally, me, I have him winning the rear poses.
And you can see that his glutes are very tight. But this is where he loses it. He just doesn't have the width, and that's the genetic thing. Hadi and Brandon are killing him on this lat spread.
And they're getting worked.
And they should. This is what we paid to see. We want you guys to fight it out. That's why you have to practice, practice, practice. Long before you get here, you'll notice some guys start to shake. It's because they didn't practice the posing. It's the hardest thing to do when you're watching your carbs, when you're doing extra amounts of cardio. You get lightheaded very easy. So you have to do this at home when no one's watching, so that when you get here,
Folks, you've got a chance to let us know who